All right. Viking Rob from I don't know what the hell we call our community at this point anymore. The Goons, once upon a time, whatever the hell we are now, the circle of trust. I don't know. How you doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing good. And yourself?
I am about to get a lot better. As always, like I say, the conversation will be fueled by America's native spirit. Tonight will be the George Dickel single barrel 15 year. We can get that on there. There it is. It is a
Awesome.
Tennessee whiskey. Yep. So I guess I'm lying because there will not be bourbon tonight. There will be Tennessee whiskey, whatever. Because it is made in Tennessee and it does use the Lincoln County process, which means they charcoal filter it with maple prior to aging. So there you go. That's what I got. I think prior to you hopping on here, I saw you're slamming Monster, right? We're going with that tonight.
I have a little bit of that. Uh, yeah, it's been a heck of a night. My wife is on call. I got to wait a while before I do anything, so I got a Bud Zero too.
Nice. Little
So
Bud Zero.
I got that going for me. In
Well, the
case I got to
best
go out
thing
and
about
drive.
that Monster is that it's clearly representative of an Army vet because you have the large can with the screw top. Okay,
Absolutely.
that is a veteran move right there. All right. Um, so you got a really interesting story. There's a lot of shit obviously we can cover and talk about. I am curious about your background though, because so your words, you are a farm boy from northwestern Iowa. What was that like? Where'd you grow up?
Oh, I grew up probably about 30 minutes south of Worthington, Minnesota, kind of up in the corner of the state. So like our biggest two towns closest to us were Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and Worthington, Minnesota. And
Okay.
everything. So I was literally in a place where we had bunny ears on the TV, and I got three whole channels, and 9, 11, and 13, and 9 and 13 were the same. So I took on the whole Viking thing just from being kind of growing up in a the Great Plains or whatever, and the Minnesota Vikings being the closest team. That's
Yeah.
what was on Sunday on TV every Sunday was the Minnesota Vikings. So I kind of grew up on that, kind of became a big hobby of mine. Nowadays I do a lot. I go to 6, 7 games a year,
Do you
do
really?
all this stuff, and yeah, I've turned it into this fan club that I'm in, and we do roughly $70,000 of charity every year for
Oh shit, that's awesome.
kids. Minnesota Children's Hospital, the Polar Plunge we do supports Minnesota Special Olympics, and then we usually pay for at least 2 or 3 funerals, unfortunately, and then we support a lot of cancer patients with their medical expenses and stuff. So,
That's awesome. Oh.
yeah,
So, well, obviously, let's back up before you started doing all those wonderful things with charity. So that was growing up. What led you to the Army? Because you joined in '96. So, what was that like in terms of where you were at? Where were you 18 when you joined,
yeah.
or
So I was 19. I
19?
actually
Okay.
started trying to enlist in 1994, and at the time, I've worn glasses, had not the greatest
Yeah.
eyesight. I mean, with glasses, yes, 20/20 or better. They would not let me in 94 or 95 because eyesight. 96, they
Really?
changed the rules and everything as to
Yeah.
where you could have a 3 on on your Polhe's
Yeah.
profile and everything, and you could go to a non-combat arms MOS.
Ah,
And I was halfway through a 2-year degree, basically for mechanics type of thing. Had a job at a diesel injection and turbo repair shop and everything, but um, and I had already mostly paid for college, but it's just something I always wanted to do. So the National Guard actually snagged me up in 1996. Third time going through MEPS, finally made it through. It's one of those
congrats.
deals just
You made
where
it.
I'm enlisted and I've got a ship date for January of 1997. I'm graduating, the college program 4 months early, and I'm sitting here. Why am I doing this again? Oh yeah, because they told me
Yeah.
twice that I couldn't. You know, that thus started the adventure.
Why the Army?
Well, I am not a big proponent of flying at all. In fact, I
Oh,
don't care for it.
fair. I'm with you.
Outside of being on like a canoe or a small bass fishing boat or something, I'm really not a big fan of sailing either. And if I was going to be in the Air Force, I'd want to fly planes. Well, I couldn't obviously do that because my
Yeah,
eyesight.
can't
The
yeah.
Navy was just there was nothing about that that appealed to me. Marine Corps never even considered it, and the Army's the one that reached out to me first. So I'm like, okay, let's see what you got to offer and everything. So I enlisted as a 63 whiskey. So back then it was a light wheeled vehicle repair
Yeah.
mechanic. And along the way, I picked up the Golf MOS, which at that time was the fuel injection electrical repair, and I kind of just got given that MOS because I already had a college degree in that stuff and was working that. Had to do a couple things, and then later on, as time progressed, pick up the E5, 9/11 happens. A few short years later, get alerted at the end of 04 or that I'm going to Iraq at the beginning of 05 and everything. And then I picked up 68 Hotel and Hotel 8, which is track vehicle mechanic and the recovery aspect of it using the M88 track recovery vehicle and stuff. So that was the start of it. And I was in Iraq from 05 to 06. And in that time, I got an offer to start working full time for the Iowa National Guard, which I took and everything, because at that point in time, the pay was a lot better than the civilian world. It's really reversed since then. But, so then from basically, I had the job secured before we ever even got boots on ground in Baghdad. So we were there for a year, did my thing, whatever, got back, moved to central Iowa, and I just retired 2 months ago or 2.5 months ago and everything after doing that for 19 years full-time and 28 and a half years total.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember seeing your retirement post. I was like, man, that's fucking awesome. I just want to do that. So you went. So you followed on. So I was in Iraq 03 to 04. 3 extensions.
I apologize about these dogs, man.
Oh, I don't even care. So 3 extensions there, and it turned into 15 months. So what month did you get into theater in 05?
Right. So basically, it was on my birthday. It was April 23rd of 2005 is when we actually jumped from. And at that point in time, we still flew out of Arifjan up to Baghdad, but it would have been on April 23 of 05. And it was right around, I think, April 30th that of 2006 that we actually flew back out to Ali Al Salim and everything and started making our way home. Oh, yeah. I went through there when I went on leave too and everything. What a wonderful place.
My favorite part of Ali Al Salim is the all sand softball field that they have that over, like if you're in the little the transient bear housing waiting for your flight, you just look down and it's just like this random softball field that no one uses. It's very military. We just have softball fields that no one ever uses. So where were you guys actually at in Iraq? Were you in Baghdad or the whole time?
So yeah, we were in Baghdad. So at the time, Camp Victory, and they had everything split up to little parts. So at the time that we got there, the 256 Mechanized Infantry out of Louisiana was the brigade combat team that was on the north part of the FOB. So it was Tigerland then. Some guys that were there at the time would remember it as Camp Tigerland. And then, of course, they left a little bit early.
By the way, Tigerland.
Right. They left a little bit early to go back, not super early, just weeks to go back because Katrina was hitting at that point in time and whatever. And so 10th Mountain had got on the ground. So 10th Mountain absorbed us and everything. That's why, you see me talk about, did 90% of what I did over there and everything, working for basically 10th Mountain. They grabbed us in, patched us over, basically put us to work doing stuff for them. And then it became Camp Liberty. It changed from Tigerland to Liberty at that point in time. But the whole FOB, I guess, was known as it is Victory. And then you have BIOP there and Striker and Slayer and all that other stuff as you're moving down, I guess, toward the airport or up toward the airport, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But
so did you mostly do recovery operations? Were you using the Hotel 8 stuff, or were you doing?
So we did do some of that, but we were kind of a recovery asset for just about everybody because you had 30.
Because things were starting to get pretty shitty at that time. So
yeah, it was troop surge, middle of troop surge time and everything. To be honest, we used the 88 to emplace a lot of T-wall barriers. And stuff like that until they got more ATEC cranes over there. We did recover several things, and a lot of them were just things that, like, if they buried it during the rainy season, if they buried something larger too far that a Hemet wrecker couldn't get it out, we'd go out with the 88. But we got pretty smart after a couple missions because we got a whopping 31 mile per hour out of that thing on a good day. So we actually was able to secure a couple hets and het trailers. So we kept the 88 loaded up on the het trailer. So what we would do is we had a recovery mission, you'd have the gun truck escorts and whatever. We had the 88 loaded up and everything. So really, all we had to do is throw the 50 on the turret if we even needed to, because we usually had several gun truck supports. We drive the het, because at least you can get 50 something out of that, right? To wherever the recovery location is, drop the 88, recover what needs to be done, load it back up, and it just saved a lot of time. I did a lot of that. There 256 left behind about 30 113 armored personnel carriers. And 10th Mountain, being light infantry, would not know what a 113 is versus a watermelon, but they knew that they had them. And then the Triple Deuce, specifically the 187 and the Triple Deuce, there was a shortage of up armored Humvees for them to actually do patrols in. So the idea was spun up that some of us full-timers, or us experts, quote unquote, we set up a maintenance support team with about 10 of us, and we got these things in running order, and they actually took these things out and patrolled with them just like a Humvee. So if you ever look at like what a M113A3 usage is supposed to be, like they require an annual service every 1,300 miles. Well, they're doing that every 3 weeks. So we were changing track pad. Like, I mean, that's why you see all these operator level jokes. Cause I mean, we'd sit there and be like, okay, anybody looking? No, we'd hook a 4-way massive chain. We'd actually pick the 113 off the ground with the spade in the ground and the 88 hooked up. We'd lift it all the way up, have it idling, put it in pivot steer, take all the grease out of the slack adjuster, so you got like this much slack and everything, and go with an impact, popping out track pads and everything, while the other guys zipping new ones on right behind, because we got big Instapacks full of just track pads, and we could get about 3 or 4 track pad replacements and loosen or shorten the linkages in the track at least one time. We can make about 3 months before we actually had to put a whole new set of track on them things. We came up with some hillbilly ass ways of doing it, but
that what you're describing is what, especially those early years in Iraq, like just the ingenuity that the soldiers were coming up with for shit. Like going from the post invasion to where like, oh, nobody had fucking armor on their vehicles. Well, we'll just create some shit. We'll, fabricate some steel on the doors, or we'll try to do the whole sandbag thing in the floors and all. But then to see the maintenance dudes they had to come up with, because the lack of parts, or just the lack of the ability to meet the maintenance that you were talking about, or just to come up with ways to make it much more efficient. Like that stuff is what I always took from those constant rotations and deployments, is that soldiers they were constantly improving, right? We call this corporate world continuous improvement. That was the definition of it. Like dudes like yourself were constantly innovating and coming up with stuff you're not going to find that shit in a reg. You figure shit out. You make things easier for yourself.
And speaking, and of course, everybody had to take their turn inevitably doing a week or 2 week stretch on the fob towers. Everybody had to take their turn because the MPs, there weren't enough of them, and there wasn't enough organic support. So of course the guard, we always got spooled up in Humvees to be gun truck. Everybody had to be in a turn on a 240 at some point in time. Everybody had to do force protection outside of the DFAC and the MWR gym, the internet cafe, blah, 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 all this other stuff. But one thing you just mentioned, the innovative stuff. So you remember the ammo cans that were sticking in front of the Humvees and everything that heated up and everything to make the EMP, heat sensing IEDs blow up, at least if not in front of the vehicle, under the engine compartment, not under the passenger compartment, right? Mm-hmm. So the reason why I've got that giant 10th Mountain Commander's coin that I posted a couple times, and a couple awards and everything from Iraq there, is because there's a CW3 Crow from 10th Mountain. He actually invented it, and I came up with the wiring schematic of how we would mount that red button when you got in, and you'd have your on and off switch above your head. I helped him figure out how we'd wire it, how we'd get it to go, to series pair, 212-volt batteries hooked in series parallels, what a Humvee has, right? And everything. So we figured out the correct kind of wiring, and then when you pulled it on, to get them heat coils to heat that ammo can up, to over 200 degrees to simulate engine heat and everything. So that we were actually, and mainly Chief, because I was an E5 at the time and in the National Guard, and how that active duty is with that. But at least they did bring me up, and they gave me the commander's coin, and I think I got a commendation medal out of it, and whatever, because they did say that, well, it's forcing the enemy to change your tactics, because it's dumb as it looks, cool, man. It worked.
That's foolish,
so A lot of people still talk about that. Yeah, I actually had a hand in the early stages of the I'm not going to say I invented it because I didn't. Chief Crow kind of did that. I had a hand in the development and refinement of that particular thing, and it did save a lot of lives. So,
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
fucking
if
cool.
if I did anything over there, that was well worthwhile. And then,
It
like the
is well.
first 150 of them or whatever that was installed before we started getting a lot of the Bravos at the time and everything, which is your wheeled vehicle guys and everything trained
Yeah.
up on in mapping out the installation. I installed a shit ton of them too. So there's that.
But see, that's the story. Those are the stories, and that's why one of the reasons that I really started doing this shit years ago is just like it is cool to talk about and talk to the guys who go do all the direct action stuff. But what's lost in that is the support element and the maintenance capabilities that came out of especially those early, like I'm talking about the really early years, like you're trying, like I'm talking probably like '03 to '07, maybe a little bit of '08, where it was just like there's nobody coming, right? Figure this
Yeah.
shit out and you'll go home when it's time to go home type of thing. But while you're here, you need to figure some shit out because the enemy was adjusting their tactics. Like, you got there when the insurgency was already live and going, right? I was leaving in '04 when it was really just starting to pick up, right? So things were very different. Um, but what you describe are the stories that are just lost. Like it's not that they're just lost on the American public. We got that. Like they're never going to know that shit. But those things are lost, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Are those stories like, is that story even something that the typical soldier in your unit knew? Like,
No,
do
because
you
I
guys keep
wrote.
that going through heraldry and like unit like records and just like the unit historian or something? Like, I mean, that's something that could probably be in the fucking the wheeled vehicle mechanics school. Like, that's a story that should be taught.
Yeah. Um, I'm writing a thing, and I don't know when I'm going to get it done, but right before, well, a year before I retired, you know how branches all have their own awards, like you got
Yeah,
St.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Christopher and St.
yeah.
Barbara's for the field artillery, because I was a FSC first sergeant for 6 years for a field artillery battalion.
Mhm.
So the Ordnance Corps has the Ordnance Corps Order of Samuel Sharp, and yet they
Yeah, I
don't
wanted to
hand
ask
that
you
out
about that. That looks cool as shit.
hardly very often, and I was able to be awarded that about a year and a half ago. And with that, you are on the roster at Fort Lee or whatever it's called now,
Or
and
Greg
everything. If you're
Adams.
yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah.
But they invite you to like write up, and it's in my little bio thing and whatever of like significant accomplishments that I've made. So it's in there. When I got back, like my unit, there was like a 70% divorce rate, and like
Yeah,
right before I retired, a buddy of mine that's a also full time, and he got his E9 here about a year and a half ago, and we're looking and to see once, and out of what ended up being a 265 person super maintenance slash do whatever other details as assigned
yeah.
company, made it two platoons from Iowa, two from the state of Washington, two from the state of Maine. We could count on our hands 3 people left that were still serving. And granted, this has been 20 years ago now,
Yeah, yeah.
but we could count on our hands 3 people that were still actually in, including him and me in Iowa. And then we tried to stay in touch with the people from Maine and the people from Washington and stuff, and just almost everybody's out, retired. I never told too many stories going up through the ranks. I wasn't an E6 for very, very long, like a year or in some. Got my E7 right away. I was an E7 for a very long time. And the units that I bounced around to and everything, I was a motor sergeant in a support maintenance company, and then I was a motor sergeant and headquarters platoon sergeant for a transportation company with 915s, line haul. That was a great gig to have. And then I was on the command maintenance evaluation team for a while, which is basically TDY at the Joint Forces headquarters. You go around, you inspect the units. Now it's a CMDP inspection, they call it. And then I became a first sergeant, did that for 6 years, actually, which is like 3 times longer than you're supposed to, but I loved it. My company
Yeah, it's the best
thrived.
job, man. It's the best job.
And I finished out my last 2 years at basically being the brigade SPO NCO.
Okay.
Um, which is a very thankless job, and people don't realize how much support operations actually make
Yeah, I was
it.
gonna say, I'm
To
glad you said that
you
because
know.
yeah, it's been 4 years and I used to really hone in on it, but now not so much. But I would always say, hey, when you say those acronyms, what do those mean for people who have no idea? So I'm glad you said it. SPO is the support
Right.
operation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I gotta remember, we're not just strictly talking like our little
yeah,
circle on here and everything.
yeah.
So support
So
operations for a brigade is, like infantry brigade combat team. You're going to have, let's just say, roughly 4,000 people, whatever, give or take. And you're going to have usually 3 infantry battalions, a field artillery battalion, um, an engineer battalion, then the BSB. So the support operations cell is actually a brigade asset. It's usually embedded with the BSB, which is a brigade support battalion. You are the ones who have to plan, and I'm talking 12 and 24 months out
yep,
on anything major
all long
coming up.
haul plan.
So all the stuff that it takes to support an infantry brigade combat team. So you can just start, from all your classes, class 1, class 2, with your water, your food, all that other stuff. Class 3, petroleum. Class 4, all of your defensive materials, your sea wire, your HESCO barriers. Class 5, ammo. Huge, especially lately.
Yeah, yeah.
It was pretty sparse.
It's
Uh,
still is, man.
and everybody makes jokes about class 6 just being whiskey. There's a lot more stuff in there. And then,
Hey, class
class
six,
7.
here we are, the class six
Yes,
stuff.
right. Yeah. Class
Isn't
7
it just
end
like, isn't class
items.
six? It's just personal items, right? Essentially, is that what?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
It's just like personal items and
yeah.
everything. But
Whiskey, right?
class 7's major end items, class 8's medical, and class 9, of course, is the thing that is really the most pain in the ass, in my opinion, because that's every bit of your maintenance repair parts, and there's a very long lag time, and it's hard to maintain
Yeah.
stocking levels because you have to justify everything, you know, and just
That's
doing that.
what? Why? What, in your opinion, is the reason there's such a lag time? In addition, I mean, I know you said there's just it's a lot of, but there's such a shortage. Why? Why do we have that shortage of all things?
Well, there's a couple different reasons. Without getting really in the weeds or too techy or nerdy or anything,
Yeah.
um, there's approved stocking levels, and then there's things that have different priority designators, right? So every unit in the United States military has a priority designator when it comes to maintenance. Units that are actually have an alert order and a tasking and a mission coming up or whatever are going to be at the top of the list. So if you're still 2 years before you're ready to jump somewhere or whatever, but there's another unit that's ahead of you and they're scrambling to get all their maintenance done, and let's say they use up all the 200 amp CE and EHOF alternators in the supply system that's currently there for a Humvee and everything. If there's a need, they're getting them. We just have to wait until the Army procures more, and then you have to work around. You see the song and dance that goes on with the NDAA every year, and then it's
Yeah.
always a massive fight about making sure that there's enough budget allocated for class 9 repair parts, and somebody's always got a bright idea of how we can spend the money better than that. Then you have the whole issue with, you have to reach out and you have to contract the lowest bidder every time when you're doing it, which is nothing. That's nothing new. That's all military equipment. But you know, you would think that if you have a C7 Caterpillar engine that is in a LMTV or an MTV, that if you're going to replace the starter on it, it's going to be the one that came from the factory. No, they're going to still bid subcomponents like that out to the lowest bidder and everything. 99% of the time, if it's a cat engine, you're going to get cat parts and everything. But the other part of the problem is the Army's really actually about 20 years behind the power curve in terms of civilian technology. I'm just going to take like the 6.5 liter engine that's still in the Humvees. And I know now active duty is more to JLTVs, joint light tactical vehicles,
Yeah.
but
That's
that
there's another
Humvee,
problem.
yeah, that Humvee engine itself, the injection pump, the injectors, the newer ones that have the turbo on it and everything, that's backline stuff. Like the company called Stanadyne makes that injection pump. That's been a backline item of theirs for over 25 years. The only time they make them is for the Army. So they actually have to fire up their little line, their like third, fourth priority parts line and everything to make one.
Wow.
and they're not going to just sit there and keep pumping them in the Army system, because you never know when the Army's going to shit can a platform. So it's kind of like a by need type of thing.
Got
So
it.
there's, like, I think I already probably spent way too long on this, but there's
No,
just
you
a,
don't. No, I love this shit because it's whether people want to hear it or not, I do. It's because
yeah.
and I can talk to you more offline about why, but I think this is fucking insightful because it's something I've seen really take place, I would say, within the last 6 years. It's just gotten really, really worse than what it used to be.
Mhm.
It was never like this. And I get it. And there's a lot of reasons.
Right.
I think you hit on one, the whole NDAA bullshit that goes on every year. That's not really something I considered. But when you start thinking about, like, you were at the brigade spill, right? Everything's second, third order effects. What happens next after this, and this? Well, that's something
Right.
that I don't think those fuckers up there sitting in the fucking cozy offices of Congress, pretending that they're so concerned about the NDAA every year, what that actually means to the Guard and Reserve unit who doesn't have any parts. And they're not going to have
Yeah.
you in 9 months because you guys can't sit there and actually make a legitimate bill that funds this stuff.
And the worst thing in the world, well, it's not the worst thing, it's reality.
Yeah.
There's two different things that happen: cross leveling and sublins.
Mhm.
If you didn't have cross leveling and sublins, and each unit needed to just actually fix and maintain what they had, instead of just, oh, well, we can't get that part, so we're going to cross level something from this other unit that's not,
Yeah.
on the Arphagin mod. It's not even Arphagin,
Yeah.
it's
It's
anymore.
right.
But,
Something else.
yeah, we'll just cross level this Humvee from this other element or whatever, a non-deployable TDY unit. We're going to cross level their Humvee to you. You get to have that one. Well, that just lets you off the hook. Now you got something that's sitting their deadline because their parts are not a priority. They're not going to make it a priority, and then sublins. Oh, well, your Humvee's broke, but guess what? We can, and this is a bad example, but let's go back 20 years. So your Humvee broke down. Oh, we can pull one of these old cuck V's out, so you can drive the Chevy Blazer around until we, sit here a year from now, and the 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 engine head that you ordered for this thing, and everything, because you had a cracked head and everything, it finally shows up for us or whatever. I mean, that's maybe not the most realistic example, but it's just, sublins kill us, cross leveling kills us. Unit priority designators makes sense, but it also gets abused. Um,
Oh, yeah.
and then you have something called a FAD and everything that also prioritizes what kind of unit you are and what pecking order that you're in, but to not only receive the parts, but how fast you can get a turnaround on your work order and stuff. And the active duty's gone to a lot of contracting and everything. The Guard really does just a lot. I mean, they're about the last bastion of any kind of maintenance, and we don't even do component rebuild anymore. Like when I first became a full-time technician and everything, working Monday through Friday, wearing the uniform every day, getting paid half of what I would if I was getting paid by my rank, because that's how they can afford to bring all the people with experience and everything else on. Welcome to the wage grade world, or if you're a production controller, you're a GS9. But I actually went and rebuilt all the injection pumps, all the starters, all the alternators, all the rear differentials, transmissions, had a hand in rebuilding engines and everything. Lasted about 18 months, and then they decided, we're not going to rebuild anything anymore. We're just going to replace everything. That made things infinitely worse right there with being able to get a hold of anything, because, okay, so you're not going to rebuild injection pumps, turbochargers, starters, nozzles, rear ends, geared hubs, half shafts, anything that you can think of anymore on these small components. You're just going to buy new and replace it. Okay, that involves a lot more money, and then you have to procure the stuff. Yeah, it just threw a big wrench in the whole system. They tried to plus things up, but the problem is, as the need went up, the budget went down every year. And anybody can go back and statistically look through what has went on. And this is military wide too. It's not just like the National Guard or the Army, or, the Army and the Marines and the Air Force. It's everybody, except for, I mean, ultra high priority stuff. I think the Navy gets a blank checkbook for anything they want, but and the Air
That's what I was
Force
gonna
kind of
say. I
does.
mean, the
You
defense budget's never going down. So why are these things the things that are actually decreasing?
Right. And I've actually, the funny thing of it is, my battalion commander, when I was in E7 for several years, is now a sitting United States Senator from the state of Iowa. You probably know who she is. right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
I have Joni Ernst actually as a signature as my senior rater on several NCOERs in the past.
Nice. Promote ahead of
Um,
peers.
right, yeah. There was one that maybe said that. Otherwise, it was like I don't. I'm not going to get into that, but no. So like I don't abuse this and everything. And every now and then I send her a message or whatever, like if we're frustrated and it's like, okay, we actually have something really major coming up and everything. So I'd say, hey, you know, not urgent, but when you get a chance, since you're on the Senate Armed Services Committee and the finance committees and all this other stuff, can you let me know why our state's class 9 budget went from here to here or whatever? She's like, well, yeah, I can, because when you're sitting in that room and you're sitting with all these people and everything, and you mentioned, hey, we need to allocate, let's just say it's $2 million just for shits and giggles, right? We need to allocate $2 million to be able to maintain what we have going on here, here, and here, and here, and here. The very first thing that's going to come out of some politician's mouth is, well, which one of our new weapon systems are we developing that needs to put its head in the chopping block and get cut off so that you can go throw money at this? You need to justify this. And in the eyes of politicians, especially ones that haven't served, that new weapon system and the
Yeah.
cutting edge of technology, that's going to win over maintenance 10 times out of 10, probably 99 out of 100.
It's one of the
And
dumbest. That's so stupid. Like,
yeah, it literally, I mean, I've
because it's
talked
compounding is the
to,
reason, right? Like it'd be
yeah,
one thing if it was a one-off, but it's compounding, and the compounding issue is what's starting to show itself. And that's what was going to lead me to my next question to you is because, fortunately, regardless of how they ended awfully, but at least, we've withdrawn so much from Afghanistan and Iraq. We're not
right.
focused on that, right? But at some point, inevitably, and maybe it isn't inevitably, maybe we actually wake up and we just play defense here on our home team. But saying we don't, how are we going to meet that need if we have to do another large scale 100, 200,000 plus soldier mobilization with vehicles, with everything, when we already can't maintain them while we're here?
So if we got into a LISCO situation, which is
Yep,
what you're
because that's what
talking
we're
about,
training for.
large scale combat
Yeah,
operations, that's what, yeah, and that's what everybody trains for. If you go through JRTC or NTC,
yeah,
you know, the whole focus over the past couple of years has been we have to get people back to LISCO. There wasn't very many of us that were around that were pre 9/11 or even NCOs or officers pre 9/11 that remember what we were doing. And then, of course, the way we fight now has changed slightly, from what it was prior to 2001 and everything. When you're talking about
yeah.
LISCO, um, all I'm going to say is stuff is fluid and it changes every day. But even right up until right before I retired, our brigade had an upcoming mission, and I don't, obviously don't know if that's still going to go forward because a lot has changed over there. It was not going to be a LISCO mission, obviously. It was going to be more back to coin stuff, but everybody's got to do their turn. They have rotations. These things have been
Yeah.
scheduled for years.
Yep.
On the if we actually had something come up, that of all the threats, right? That so I wouldn't even list Russia's number one anymore. I mean, it's got to be China
Yeah.
and everything, just because, and they're an unproven commodity too. But we've seen what Russia does, and you got North Korea just because they have nukes, and then four is obviously Iran, who is the most unstable out of all of them, but they don't have nukes and everything. Any one of those four, they're not going to mobilize and bring the fight to us, so we're going to play an away game like we always do. And if we have to fight LISCO as to where, I mean, it's an entire one country's military against another in uniformed conventional combat. I don't know what that's going to look like right now, bro. I mean, I don't think we're in a position to be doing that.
No. I mean, even
Um,
I don't.
just from a logistics sustainment and maintenance readiness
But see,
perspective,
let me push back though, because I
uh,
know we're discussing our
we'll
inefficiencies.
find a way.
But
But I mean,
how good are these other countries at doing these things?
well, we already seen that Russia is an abject, I mean, joke of a failure. They have
Yeah.
zero concept of logistics. I mean,
So that's why, like, maybe
you
we
know,
don't have to. Maybe we don't need to feel too or as bad Because I mean, like, look, this isn't new. Like everyone knows logistics are the things that win wars. And well, we
Right.
haven't really, I don't know. I mean, from a combat standpoint, I don't think we're struggling too much, but we still need vehicles, right? We still need those, still need the
Yeah.
armor, still need the tanks. We still need all those things to move soldiers, the calves, all the Bradleys, everything that goes into supporting the infantry brigade combat teams, like you talked about. So, I think one of the first things I remember as being like a young little private was like, yeah, anyone can do something for 2 weeks, but then what? And that conversation was centered around, yeah, Russia, China, whoever the adversary was.
Mhm.
Any country can hold out for 2 weeks, but then what? Because that's when you start getting into your resupply of everything, not just, parts and maintenance, but food, water, supplies, medical, all that shit. And always been very good at that because we have not just what we have done militarily, but we've also had a pretty good contracting and civilian workforce to support those things. So I guess that would be
Yeah.
my question without really knowing, because it's just not my area. But I just was curious if you know any insight into or any good educated guesses into how well these adversaries we forecast are at doing those things. Russia,
So I can tell you this, and just before I get into that, though, if you remember in the very early couple of weeks of the Russian-Ukraine conflict, when that Russia convoy that was like 3 miles long all ran
yeah,
out of
yeah,
fuel and
yeah,
everything,
yeah,
100 vehicles sitting there.
yeah.
Just think if you had a hog, every hog driver in the world is probably sitting there with blue balls, just going, "Oh, I wish a mother would." I mean, and you cannot afford to make mistakes like that against the U.S. with all of our capabilities and stuff. But
Right.
to directly address that, how would another country look like? So prior to it was in the middle of 2015. And I'm not going to get super political because I think it's stupid unless we do decide to talk politics. But then, you know, everybody thought basically Hillary was going to win that election. At
Yeah.
the same time, the powers that be in the military were very firmly convinced that something was going to become, fluid, and we were going to start seeing a shooting war over with North Korea, right?
Yeah.
To the extent as to where, I mean, they had guard and reserve units. I know at the time I had just got my first sergeant position. So Ford Support Company for Field Artillery Battalion, they actually took senior leadership over to Camp Casey and Camp Beauregard and a couple
Yeah.
other places in South
Camp
Korea.
Casey. Yeah. Yeah.
They actually had the exact grid coordinates of where we were going to set every battery up. And then there was briefings
Shit.
that said, when this thing kicks off, the first 7 days is going to be, I mean, it could be up to, depending on how well we fortify, like a 70% attrition rate on either side. But after that is when they projected North Korea was going to shoot their wad. They were going to run out of ammunition, and that's when we could just move forward and steamroll them, because they don't have
Unless they use
external
nukes.
supply lines. They when they run out of ammo and their stuff breaks down, it stays broken down. When they're out
Right.
of ammo, they're not getting resupplied like what we are with all of our
Right.
lines of effort,
Yeah.
our logistics and sustainment community, our transportation, our maintenance, everything else. So yeah, it would be brutal. There would be losses and everything. That's what the projection was, and that was late 2015, early 2016. That type of talk was going around, and then of course, that was stood way down and not ever really discussed again. The big one I'm looking at is if China invades Taiwan, there has to be a response. It almost has to be globally. And this would be the other half of my answer. I don't think the US alone is doing anything anymore without some type of coalition. And we can mock what we've had in the past for coalition for global war on terror. But if it came to communist China actually making an aggressive move like that, I think pretty much all of our allies would ante up and be there. Now, how effective are they going to be? I don't know. Not going to speak to that, but I do feel like, at least in terms of trying to do the primary objectives of naval own the waters with our Navy and everything, shut theirs or contain theirs down or contain them, gain air superiority and everything. I don't feel like the U.S. would be doing that alone. And also things like that, the Air Force, the naval, aviation, our carrier groups, is like priority number one. And pretty much, nobody's beating that. So I think the strategy that you use while you're getting everything else into place gives us time to look at our numbers, get our equipment to what we used to call 1020 standards. I mean, I know a lot of people hate hearing that term and everything, but that's the truth. You know, you want to get it to fully mission capable, what they call it now, FMC standards and everything, and get ready to roll. And there would also be, you know, a large contingent of manufacturing that would spark off, I guess, in case of Lisco. And I'm not going to say they're going to start converting like the Ford plant or in Dearborn or the Chrysler plant somewhere or whatever to producing, you know, military vehicles on top of what they have. But you will certainly see an influx in manufacturing, and then you're going to start seeing all the civilian contracting companies being brought on to make sure that they can fully support something like Lisco as well.
So my concern with that piece is the only thing I heard is that it's like an isolated allies of the U.S. versus China, whereas China has BRICS, right? So they've got the whole Brazil, Russia, India,
Yep.
China alliance. And I only bring that up because Russia's one thing, still obviously a superpower, whether we like that or not. And maybe we don't like the way they fight. But when I bring in Brazil and India, I bring those two up because BRICS is a huge alliance that I feel we've neglected to counter, and that's hopefully something maybe that gets addressed in this administration. But I bring them up specifically because of population. Like, who's got
Yeah,
more people to sacrifice than China and India, right? Um,
exactly.
and you know, Brazil is obviously a very large country as well. Maybe they're a little more friendly to the U.S. than the others, but financially, it's a huge alliance of those nations, and that's what this that concerns me. Because, like, look, I don't want to sit here and just black pill all night and think about the worst possible scenarios, but man, it's shit like that that's got to be keeping up people who obviously have way more uh, invested in these outcomes than the two of us. But
Yeah.
it's 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 a little spicy to consider.
Well, if they start calling up prior service and retirees, then I guess you and I will be back invested again, won't we?
You
But
are you are still a fighting age, my friend. You're going. You're going back.
for a couple more years, anyways. Yeah. What was your MLS again, or what'd you
I'm a
do?
92 alpha right now. So
Oh, 92 Alpha
yeah.
right now. Yeah.
Yep.
So
It's all logistics.
that's the MOS that I tried to get once I was in E8, and they
Mhm.
absolutely would not pay me for the reclass because it was going to cost them something like, you know, over 10 grand or whatever.
Yeah, with the
Well,
two
every single,
phases.
yeah. So I was a 91 sitting in a 92 Alpha slot for those 2 years as the Brigade
Yeah.
SPO
So
NCO.
you just MOS TOM.
Never could
Yeah.
get transferred over. Well, every single possible E9 slot that was out there was a 92. There was
Yep.
not any
That's all there
91s.
is, man. It's weird. Those
And
little,
so I just, you know,
yeah.
I ran out of time. You know, I could only milk it out for so long, you know. So,
Hey, hey,
yep.
hang on one sec. Hey, what what's what are you doing? Yelling at my cat. The cat's literally never done this in 2 years. He's sitting here on top of the counter. I got to get this cat. Hang on one second.
Oh, no, let's take a pause. I'm going to go get a new beer.
All right, you go get a new beer. I'm back. Cat, one more time, cat. You're going outside. It's 15 degrees. Is that what you want? Is that what you want to do when Jesus comes back outside at 15 degrees? Because you will. Ridiculous. We're talking to Viking Rob. You can find him while he comes back on the X app at Viking Rob VWO. That is him. He's got his new Bud Zero. He is back. We,
Yes,
we
sir.
are we are blackpilling bricks and the invasion of Taiwan if it ever happens in our anticipated maintenance response. All right. I think let's move on to a little more positivity, at least for me. Happy Ben Johnson Day to you from all Chicago Bears fans to you, Minnesota Vikings fans.
You know what?
What's your
That
take on that?
actually,
Because you're in the same division. You've watched the Lions do their thing with Ben Johnson on offense for a few years.
yeah.
What's your feeling in old Viking
So
land right now?
I'm not super happy with the one guy that I felt could comfortably outcoach Brian Flores, our defensive coordinator. Um, Yes, there's two teams that beat the Vikings this year, the Lions twice and the Rams twice, and unfortunately, the second time was the playoff game. That
Yeah.
was I
Well,
know I,
that
but
was your
I will
quarterback's
tell you
fault. I
what
will give you.
I tell you what, Darnold just kind of. I think the moment was too big for him. The plays were definitely there. Well, the plays were there for the Lions too, but Ben Johnson just he found a way to attack Brian Flores' defense. And yes, the Lions had a wonderful offensive line. I'm not going to take that away from him or from them, I should say, and everything. I'm not real happy about him being able to now actually give Caleb Williams the coaching that he's going to require to be a good or even someday perhaps an elite quarterback in the league. And you guys have weapons. I mean, you look at everything from Cole Kmet, who is a good tight end, to the rookie wide receiver. Who'd you guys
Roma Dunze.
draft? Yeah,
Yep.
Odunze. God, I got brain farts so bad. It happens when you get Alzheimer's, man.
No, I'm glad you actually
Um,
know this. This is cool. You actually know the team. That's because I said we're fans of the same
yeah,
team, so this is funny.
I don't feel like uh I don't feel like you're in a bad position. I think the Bears could have been a somewhere between a 7 and a 9 win team if just luck would have went their way on some things. So the Bears are nowhere near as far behind in the North as what it looks like when you look at the Lions being a 15-win team, the
Yeah.
Vikings 14-win team, and of course there's a 90% chance we're rolling with our. Well, he won't be a rookie anymore, but he'll be a rookie to playing NFL meaningful snaps. JJ McCarthy, our quarterback next year. So I think you guys are going to be more up toward the 8 to 10 win team that you probably could have been this year and everything with Ben Johnson.
Yeah,
Because
none
the
of it
coach
matters if you don't have the offensive line. That's what he's got to fix. I mean, that was their issue.
us too, man. Um,
That's the issue.
uh,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the Vikings they played well, I think, most of the year, but that playoff game really exposed their line with against the Rams defensive front. Like that
yeah,
was that. I'll give the Rams credit. I don't know how they do it every year. They're constantly just they're always playing for the moment, giving away draft picks or whatever. And then when they finally had to, they went and drafted. They get what that kid Verse from Florida State and someone else and
yeah.
what's his name retired, Aaron Donald.
Aaron
And
Donald.
yeah, and then
Yeah,
their defensive line is back to just being disruptive. And unfortunately, yeah, like it's cool to watch all these plays and all, but if you don't have a line on either side, it doesn't matter.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
and that's what I watched all 16 games, 17 games now with Williams. Like the dude literally would get the ball and be running for his fucking life. And no quarterback's going to live and thrive like that, not in the NFL. Like it's just not possible.
yeah. Two of the best tackles in the league is Penei Sewell on the Detroit Lions
Yeah,
and
well, yeah,
Christian Darrisaw on the
yeah.
Vikings. Darrisaw mid-season tore his ACL, so we ain't getting him back till the middle of next year
That
and
fucking
everything.
sucks, man. Yeah, it
Which
sucks.
is why they got the Robinson from Jacksonville. So they'll most certainly keep him on the team. My hope is maybe he can move to left guard and replace Blake Brandel and everything. And Garrett Bradbury has had an amazingly long NFL career with the Minnesota Vikings for being a not very good center at all. And then, of course,
Did
we're
the
not
same
even
shit.
talking
That
about
shit
what.
happened in the Bears for the last 8 years before they finally got rid of
Oh,
Cody
fuck, man.
Whitehair. I mean, it's the same thing. If you could be a
Cody
center,
Whitehair,
you can last.
yeah,
You can last. You'll last. It's such a difficult position to get right, and the guys that are there, they're going to stick around.
yeah. I
It's
do
such,
hope we bring back like Aaron Jones. I would like to see one more
yeah, I
year out
like
of
Aaron
him.
Jones. He's a good player.
Um,
I always hated watching him when he was on Green Bay, but he's a good player.
well, yeah, yeah.
What happened to Dalvin Cook? Where'd he end up?
So he bounced. I mean, the last that I heard, so his stint with the Jets. I
Jets.
think
That's what it
maybe
was. Yeah.
last year
Jets.
he might have had 200 yards total the entire year and got ran
He
out of
fell off
town.
so quickly. Like he was so good.
And then he ended up on the Cowboys for a
That's
while and
right.
everything. And I don't know what happened because his name and his number
Not
never got
starting
called
here.
for nothing
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah, it's weird because some running backs can they've proved that they can kind of hold on a little longer, like the Derrick Henry, right? Saquon Barkley, I give him credit for all the injuries he's gone through. He's came back even stronger. But it's like some of those guys like Dalvin Cook, they 5, 6 years and then
Oh,
they just wall. No, you can bring her on. It's fine.
oh no, I'm sorry that my wife is just getting home, so the
Yeah,
dogs
you
are
bring her
barking and
in.
everything else. But, it's I'm trying to keep the noise at a minimum while we're talking
No,
here.
no
But,
worries, man. So do you think
yeah, here we
they're going to move on from Darnold, or are they going to franchise him, or what? You think they're just going to roll with McCarthy and let Darnold walk?
So if we did franchise tag him, and if it's going with the average of the top 5 players at the position, that's north of $40 million. And I just don't feel with all the needs that the Vikings have. So here's the other thing: the Vikings are set to have 4 draft picks, including a compensatory pick in the 3rd round that they're going to get for Kirk Cousins from the other year.
Yep.
So you almost guarantee you they're going to trade back out of number 20 because they have the 24th pick with their 1st round pick. If they trade down, they can pick
Fumbled.
up a second league. You need a real true nose basically. Since Linval Joseph played nose tackle for the Minnesota Vikings, that's the last real nose tackle we've had. We need a center. We need a left guard. We need a right guard. Skill position players, we're good. I mean, we've got wide
Yeah, you got
receivers.
the best receiver in the world, so that helps.
Yeah,
well, outside of Jamar Chase, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. That's
They're
a
both
matter of
they're
opinion.
both they're both fucking studs.
Right.
Both
But
of those guys are incredible.
hell yeah, and we could use. I mean, if you bring Aaron Jones back and everything, I just don't see the sense in franchise tagging Darnold because you're going to end up paying him something like $42 million. I don't see the sense in giving him a long-term contract when you've
They
got a
brought in Daniel
serviceable
Jones, so it's kind
Yeah,
of
you
a
got
preemptive
Danny
move to
Dimes
be
in
him a
there.
backup. Yeah.
Then you got Nick Mullins, who will throw it for 420 yards every game. He's just going to throw 5
4
interceptions
interceptions
with
too.
it.
Yeah.
So,
Nick Mullins is a fucking
that's
rock
one
star. I
shady
love
play
like
that.
everywhere that guy goes, he's just like, yeah, you're right. I'm gonna throw 400 yards and 4 interceptions. What's up?
Right?
I love it. Dude is
Oh,
fearless. He just doesn't have the athletic ability to match his ego. It's hilarious. I love it. Which is kind of like me in my wood bat league and still playing baseball, right? Like, look, I'm gonna go out
right.
there and act like I can still hit 400 and drop bombs. I can't. I'm gonna try, and it's gonna go down. That's funny.
Nice.
Nick Mullins, yeah, I love that shit.
That's awesome.
Have you? So you go up to this Minnesota. So I was just curious, like, I don't know if you have any thoughts on Kevin Warren since he's come over to Chicago. You familiar with him? He's team president for Chicago. He was with Minnesota for a while. Got the stadium built. I have such mixed feelings on that guy.
So he was on the staff and everything and whatever. I guess I don't. I mean,
That's fine. I just
as you guys are working towards the new stadium and everything, if anything, if he can
clusterfuck.
get you guys something as nice as what we have and everything, I think that's a
That,
big
yeah,
boost
it
for
looks
your team.
beautiful, man.
You
That
know,
stadium looks amazing. I'd love to see it. Like I have no desire to go to Ford Field. I would love to go see the Bears play on the road against the Vikings and the Packers. I could care less about going inside of a fucking glorified basketball arena in Detroit. Like I don't want to see that.
right? Well,
Like
you'll have to hit me up for the Bears game next year because we start Friday nights with fan meet and greets, so that's when we get the Viking fan and the Bear fans that are all the super fans together.
cool shit, man.
And we usually do some sort of charity raffle. Like I said, we
Okay.
do a lot of stuff between the VWO Viking World Order
Yeah.
fan club, and then
Uh-huh.
there's several different Bear fan clubs that we tailgate with, and and then there's usually always some Saturday type of event, or at least going to restaurants or doing something fun, having some get-togethers. And then you've got the tailgate and whatever. I probably get you right in the end zone where I normally sit section 140 in the super fan section. We just got to get you all dressed up in your beer stuff. And because I got about $1,200 of Viking, actual
my
leather
goodness.
body armor, the Viking horned helmet and all this fun shit. And we'll get on the Jumbotron and whatever, but it's a good time, win or lose. We have fun there. I was just really irritated with the way they treat a lot of my friends up there at Ford Field, especially my buddy.
Oh, really?
Sir Death is pretty well-known Viking fan and everything. He's a guy that's got his entire body covered in tattoos. And so his girlfriend, Kristen, is like 8 months pregnant. Well, they got a chance to go to the game.
Okay.
Last minute, they went up there. And, Sir Death, when he's got his boots on, he's 6'8". 300 pounds.
So he's a Viking.
Whatever. He was trying they were trying to get out of there, and he, he was leading the path and everything, and she was following. Well, some fans put their hands on her and everything, and they're lucky he didn't see it, and they were just trying to get out of there. That's how rude they were. And I'm like, come on, guys. I know your team has sucked rotten ass for 31 years, and you've had basically this is the second year of being good, but act like you know what it's like to win. Don't be a bunch of dickheads. And the Lions fans that come to Minnesota, they're the good ones. I mean, we hang out with them. There's a group of the Lions fans called the Tub Gators, and I don't care if it's 15 below. They'll have a tub gate, a hot tub sitting on a trailer in the tailgate lot, and they will be in that fucker.
That's fucking awesome.
I mean, there's just so many cool traditions and just little quirky shit. I love the NFC North fans, but hearing that kind of shit, I don't think I'd want to go back to Ford Field for any reason either. The way, and they've gotten, I mean, infinitely worse over the past 2 years about stuff too.
I can imagine.
We'll see once now. Now they had this one and done playoff loss, maybe brought them back down to earth a little bit.
Yeah, it's like I posted it like as soon as it happened. I was like, the Lions just remembered who they are. They're still the Detroit Lions. No matter what your fucking regular season is.
Right.
Still the Detroit Lions. Which I take solace in because, the Bears still live off of like it's 1985. And I'm like, guys, we suck. We've sucked for a long fucking time. A long time since that damn NFC Championship in 2010 when Cutler hurt his leg or hurt his knee.
Right.
Fucking one playoff appearance. No, actually two. I'm sorry. Fucking Nagy when the Eagles
you had the double
doink. Right?
Yep.
Like you go back, I've said this before, but that Cody Parkey was doing that shit all season and they kept sticking with him. They had a chance to move on from him and they never did. The dude against the Lions we're talking about, he hit the upright and missed 4 extra points in one game. He hit it 4 times. Yet you can't coach that. That takes talent to be that fucking bad. And he did it all season. And then sure enough, everyone kept saying it because all I do is listen to Chicago sports talk radio. Like, we're going to get to the playoffs and he's going to cost it. And I remember I was in California. I was stationed there at the time. I'm watching the game with my daughter. And Cody Parkey goes to do the kick. And he crushes it right down the fucking middle. Eagles called a timeout. And my daughter's like, oh, we made it. I'm like, nope, they called a timeout. Just let's wait. And sure enough, next double fucking doink. And my daughter just looking at me like, what happened? I'm like, he fucking missed. That's what happened. That's what happened. And that dude, that kick, if you think about it, that dude changed the trajectory of so many people on that team, from Ryan Pace, the GM, to Matt Nagy, the coach, to Mitch Trubisky, the fucking quarterback, Khalil Mack, all of them off of that kick. Like it was all downhill from there. Like you think about it, he makes that kick. It's a playoff win. Who knows? Maybe you lose the next week, but you got a playoff win under your belt in your first fucking season. You can ride and build off of that, right? Yeah. But no, instead you lost. And then he doubles down and starts doing this talk show circuit afterwards. Like, oh yeah, I'm fucking like, it was such
what are the odds too?
I mean,
the odds of that happening are just astronomical.
Actually, they were good because he'd done it all year, bro. That's what I was saying.
Right?
It was just the fucking timing of them calling that fucking timeout. What Doug Peterson was still the coach because I think didn't the Eagles go on and win the Super Bowl that year? That was 2018. Yeah, I think they beat the Patriots.
Yeah, it was 18.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that was 18. So yeah, like they go on with Nick Foles of all fucking people to win the Super Bowl.
No, the Eagles is the one that beat us. It would have been the 17th season in 2018. The Eagles have won the year before that, and then
I think the Eagles lost, and then that was the Rams and Patriots, right? Rams and Patriots.
Yes.
Yeah, 13-3, most boring Super Bowl I've ever seen in my life. Yeah.
Right.
No.
Well, did you hear about Minnesota's new record, though?
No.
Okay, yeah, we now are the proud owner of the most playoff losses in NFL history.
Really?
And that's with considering the Packers and the Bears, who have been around, like, had a 40-year head start on us.
Yeah, well, the Bears just don't go anymore. That's why. So
I mean, fuck. Lost the most Super Bowls ever. In fact, we're tied with the Buffalo Bills, and that's why
because they were going every year in the 70s, right? Like they were always
supporter of the Buffalo Bills right now. Yeah,
same with me. I just want the Bills to win.
All 4 of our losses in the 70s. Technically, the 69 season was the first one that got beat by the Chiefs and everything. The 73, Chiefs. 74, and 77. And then the Bills. Yes, the Bills 4 in a row in the 90s. I don't know what's worse. Owning the 70s but choking, or having a really great but yet terrible 4-year stretch in the 90s.
I
Of course,
know that.
Dallas
I
had a
I,
big
I
say in that.
remember that shit, man. I remember I fucking from Scott Norwood
Yeah.
missing that fucking fit. Like it. The Bills, man, like those guys were so good 4 years in a row and couldn't win one of them. And they lost back
The
to back to the
entire
Cowboys, 92 and 93 or
the
90.
entire the
Yeah.
fact that the NFC North this year put 3 teams into the playoffs,
And
made
they all
history by
fucking
having
blew it.
two 14-win teams play for the division title, and then all 3 teams go one and done in the
Yeah, they all
freaking
got well, they
playoffs.
all got blown out.
Yeah, just
They
absolutely.
weren't even games. Like they were just
No,
I guess you could say the best maybe have been the Lions, but you give up 45 fucking points? Like, come on, man.
yeah, we hung in there for a half, but we just couldn't
No, it
overcome
was good, but
the.
like it's like you said though, every
Yeah,
time they had a chance to do something, Sam Darnold would make a mistake or they'd get fucking
yeah,
sacked. 9
yep,
sacks. You can't win like that, man. Yeah. That was tough.
yeah,
Yeah, you're right. I
absolutely.
think Sam Darnold with those last 2 games from the last game of the season and that playoff game, that dude cost himself so much money.
Probably.
Like, I
Um,
mean, that sucks.
he probably cost him a spot with being on the Vikings next year because I think the consensus feeling, at least from the fans and everybody that writes sports articles of the beat writers, ESPN, NFL.com, whatever, was that if Darnold can win a couple playoff games and at least get to the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl or whatever, they're probably bringing him back and everything because you almost have to. Well, now I think common sense is you just put JJ McCarthy out there and
Yeah, you have
he's your
to.
future
Second
anyways.
year, he should be healthy. You
Yeah.
got it. You have to. You have to see what you have. I don't know. I think he's going to end up on some shitty team like the fucking Raiders or something because they don't have a quarterback. You know, they can win
Yeah.
it. There's nobody really coming out in the draft this year. I mean, you got what Shador Sanders and Cam, what's his name?
Right.
Um, so yeah, if I'm the
Yeah. One of
Raiders,
the
the Raiders could always say, "Oh, there we go. Oh, he's a little
I got
tuxedo.
one of the
I
babies
love
just
it.
could not resist anymore, so he wanted
Love
some
it.
family time.
Is he a
Yeah.
is he a brown tuxedo? No, he's black. Okay, yeah. I have a tuxedo.
Yeah, old black and white one.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome. How many kittens do you have?
I had 3 of them. They should
Okay.
probably be rehomed, but we haven't
Oh,
found any place for them yet. So
that's awesome. I love cats. We have a lot of
yep,
cats in our circle.
we do,
You
and we have one
you
famous
follow
one and
Joe Kent?
everything.
You follow Joe Kent?
What's yeah,
Yeah, so Joe's the funniest thing about Joe is people don't even realize it. Dude's got four. He's got four cats. Like one of them's named Slayer. It's like a long black-haired
yeah.
fucking. Yeah, so yeah. Yeah, he's got some awesome cats. That's a good transition. We just said Slayer. I'm not really actually a big Slayer fan, but I do love the same. I think we're all into the same type of music here. But
Yeah,
um, yeah, so you actually play in band. Do you still play now? Or
I
just,
do.
okay.
Oh, hold up one second.
Yeah.
What are you wearing for your shirt?
Oh yeah, that's
You
my
are,
Iron
aren't you?
Maiden. I told you, bro. That's my legacy of the
Oh,
Meets 2022. I got Eddie. He's the pilot here. He's flying the plane.
yep. Oh, I got it. I got it too. I got
Oh,
Iron
there you
Maiden
go.
Power Slave.
Yes, nice. Outstanding. Yeah, this is the
That
legacy
was
of the
not
beast for
planned. That was
22.
not planned.
This was the one I took my daughter to in Chicago. I took her for the first
Nice.
time. Yeah, so that was cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was. I missed going to see him this last time. They were just here. I was gonna go see him in Baltimore, and I didn't have time to deal with the traffic shit because I really wanted to see the playlist that they did with this Future Past tour. I thought would be awesome, but
Right.
we'll catch
And
him.
then Nico McBrain
Yeah, he
retired and
just
everything. I
retired, man.
really
Yeah.
wish I would have driven to go see him. It's been probably I think 6 years ago, maybe. I went out to Lincoln, Nebraska, and seen him out there at the arena out there, and Ghost opened up for him, and I'd never heard Ghost. I mean, I've heard their songs, but never seen
Yeah.
them or anything. So that I don't care for the Satan crap and everything because they're a damn good band.
Yeah, the visually I
That,
can't deal with it, but the
uh,
music's not bad. Like they're good for a rock band.
yeah,
They're
but
interesting.
then I mean, Maiden Dickinson was just on his game. I mean, all 3 guitar players, Dave Murray, Adrian
They're
Smith,
fucking
Yannick
nuts,
Gears,
man. It's crazy.
just did not miss a freaking note.
Yeah.
And yeah, I play bass. So the band I got right now is kind of a cover band. We play like bike nights, you know, uh, motorcycle like events and stuff
Mhm.
like that. we'll do American Legions, VFWs, Moose Lodges, that kind of stuff for half price. But then we do a lot of like outdoor city festivals and stuff. Like, you know, we're the band that they get up on the town square when they're trying to do their yearly fundraiser, or they're, you know, get done with their parade, that kind of stuff and whatever. I used to play lead guitar in like a metal band and everything. I played bass in an original metal band called Shatterbone, and if you look that up on YouTube, there's 3 different albums on there.
Okay.
First 2 have me on it, basically, and then well, and in fact, most it's a lot of it was just what I wrote on the second one, because that's right when I was getting activated to go to Iraq. So the guitar player actually, we had my scratch track bass lines down. He finished out most of it and everything, but I've done 7 different original CDs for independent like artists and stuff like that I've been friends with and whatnot over the years. And it just seems like I tried the original music thing of trying to go to Minneapolis, St. Paul, Sioux Falls, Fargo, you know, Des Moines, all this other stuff back in the early 2000s when I was still a young man.
Yep.
Could not make money. We lost money. We couldn't afford to do it. The only time you make money is selling your CDs and your merchandise and everything. So, I mean, I was little Mr. Gene Simmons too. I made sure that we had t-shirts, we had glossy photos, we had CDs, we had package deals, all that other stuff. But I mean, shit, you just get burnt out. And it's like,
Yep.
I think the very first Shatterbone CD, we sold 12,000 copies of that just with us making copies on our computers, printing the freaking jackets,
Awesome.
everything else.
Yeah.
That's about, you know, anymore that kind of thing went way away now that you have things like
It's all
Spotify
digital.
and
Yeah. No, that's
so
so. How'd you get into
cover
music
bands
though?
is,
How'd you get into guitar? What made you get into that?
well, when I was about 4 years old, my mom decided that it would be wise to make me take piano lessons, which I did surprisingly enough for 12 more years after that.
Nice. It's a
And it
natural
was
transition to guitar, same scales.
so
So,
the Lutheran hymnal, all this, you know, and I mean, she had 2 organs sitting in the house too. So not only was
oh
I
wow.
being forced to play this music that I just really hated, and then listening to stuff on the side like Elton John that, you know, you could rock a little bit on the piano, or
Yeah.
Billy Joel, or, you know, whatever. But at the same time, I asked for a guitar. Well, they gave me this little miniature guitar, and you can't even find these things anymore. It's a brand called Norma. Nowadays, I've got it like a $2,800 Taylor acoustic or whatever,
Nice.
but I taught myself just looking at books, and then some guys that went to my church that were actually really, really awesome blues guitar players and everything.
Yeah. And that translates
As
really
I
well to
got
metal.
as I got older, these guys started showing me all these licks. And I grew up like listening to AC/DC and Kiss and Van Halen. They were like my 3 that I
Yeah.
liked. I got into Iron Maiden like when I was in the college. I'm like, where the hell's this band been my whole life? You know,
Yeah.
it was also then that I first started playing bass a little bit because,
Okay.
well, actually, to be fair, right after I gotten back out of basic and AIT, got my apartment, I moved into an apartment where there was an existing band all the time. So I started doing sound, lights, and like guitar setups for this band. So this band had a unique issue. Either the guitar player or the bass player, one of the two, and usually not both, would always pass out drunk and not be able to finish the third set. So I would jump up and either play bass or guitar. So I learned how to play bass like in 1 week out of necessity.
That's
And this guy was a huge Iron Maiden head, and he's like, "Oh man, if you think Geddy Lee is good," and I hated Rush at the time, now I love him, but you
oh,
got
they
to
got good
listen to
music.
Steve
Yeah.
Harris
Same way.
from
Same.
Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
And I've like ever since I picked up a 4-string bass guitar, and like even right now in the band, I've got a couple hot rodded, you know, couple $1,000 active pickup Yamahas and stuff like that. I play a standard Fender P bass that I put about a $300 Bartolini pickup in it and made it sound as close to Steve Harris as I can. And I got a new Ashdown rig coming from Sweetwater. It cost me about $1,400, but I got a new bass amp rig coming and everything. This is really, really going to sound great and everything. But you know, I listen to that kind of stuff. I like the good old bass players. I mean, like the guy from Cream, Jack. Oh, not Jack. What was his name from Cream? I mean, just an amazing bass. Like plays leads right alongside Eric Clapton. Brain fart again. Ginger Baker is a drummer. I can't remember. Anyways, I got into it.
Jack
Bass
Bruce.
playing. Yes, Jack Bruce. Yeah. God, what a bass god. But even then, just growing up, I've always kind of gravitated towards bass lines. And then everybody in the late 80s and early 90s wanted to be a lead guitar player and everything up until Nirvana showed up and Green Day
Yeah, and
and
ruined
bands.
fucking everything and fuck Green Day.
Yes. And whatever. So it's like, you know what?
They're both
I'll move
CIA.
to bass.
Both bands were CIA ops that just dumbed down society.
Yeah.
That's my
I was
contention.
like,
Same
I
with the
will move
fucking
on.
gangster rap movement. Like they took a good
Yeah.
genre in hip hop and they fucking ruined it with the ghetto garbage. Same with
Yeah.
grunge. It killed metal hair bands where talent was actually involved. They dumbed down society from two ends, and I'm sticking by that. That's my story. It's a CIA op.
Yep. And then just to make sure that we offend everybody, when new metal came out, I swear to God, I could not stand Corn. I mean, if they learn
Oh,
more than three
I was
chords, it was
actually well.
amazing.
Corn came out when I was in middle school, so that's why I
Yeah.
liked them.
Seven string guitar, tuned to the key of Satan flat with 785 stomp pedals and 3 whole notes that you know how to play, and
That's
only
it.
one of them the right way.
Yeah.
And then,
And then you play every chord backwards, so it's out of tune constantly, and it's just
right,
like it's just noise, but it was organized confusion, and it worked. It
yeah,
worked on kids like me. I was 13, eighth grade,
yeah.
chilling, like listening to Corn, first album.
It's like everybody's well, yeah, but Fieldy was a really good bass player. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sure he
Fieldy.
probably could have been, but I also could have thrown barbed wire onto a fence post and got the same tone if I hooked electricity. Yeah, I mean, just saying, I mean, shit.
Yeah, it's man, like honestly, like we talk about you said new metal and all, and I've there's not really been any bands that I've gotten into that I would well, Burning Witches, but I mean that's Swedish and so they're kind of new, but they play an older
Right.
style. Um
So like black metal and Euro metal
I
never
just
really
can't get
changed
into the
hands. Like,
dark. I can't get into the deep like the my brother loves a lot of
Hammerfall.
like the dark metal shit, but he's got a really wide knowledge of metal and
Yeah.
he showed me tons of it. I just can't get into the singing, like the dark, deep,
Oh,
like
like the
screaming. I can't
Gimu
do that.
Borgir, Cradle of Filth, that
I
kind of
can't do
stuff.
it.
The
I
singing is
like the
probably not
melodic
their
stuff,
main
like the
thing.
shit you said, like in your like I love the melodic, like the Queensryche, the Iron Maiden, the
Yeah.
Judas Priest. I like singers,
Yep.
right, that actually accompany and make the music
Right.
and sound like they belong in the band. Like I like that stuff. Now I can appreciate the music of that stuff, like that dark metal and all that black metal.
Yeah.
I get it. Like that's why I always tell my brother, can I just get the music? I don't want to hear the singer. Let me just get the tracks. Let me just listen to the music because there's some crazy talent there. But the
Hell yeah.
singing piece, I just can't get into. And same with death metal, like Cannibal Corpse and all these bands we grew up with in
Yep.
the 80s. Like I can appreciate your music. I can't get into the singing. It's not my thing. Just can't do
So
it.
this death metal super group, Chris Barnes, that was from Cannibal Corpse, made the group 6 Feet Under, and
Yeah,
it's
I remember
funny because
see
they
my
cover.
brother had the only
So
band
we
I
opened.
actually like. Do you remember a band called Death?
Yeah,
Okay, I
absolutely.
really
We
love those
opened up for
guys.
6 Feet Under and
Yeah.
Death at Minnesota Metal Fest in
Did you really?
2003. That Shatterbone band did, yeah.
Nice.
But we didn't even do the death vocals. It was just kind of like hardcore, like Pantera kind of
Yeah.
sounding
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But the reason why I like Euro metal bands, like the ones that are still going, like Hammerfall, even
Oh,
Yike
Hammerfall.
back
I
in the day,
love those. I love
you know,
Hammerfall, dude. Those are my favorite.
and that's why,
I
just going
love
back
those
to the old
guys.
staple, like UFO, God love Eddie Trunk and all his homerism, but UFO is still one of the greatest freaking bands out there, which then evolved into Michael Schenker Group and stuff like that. I mean, those bands knew how to lay it down musically and with vocals. And you know, even old Rainbow, some Richie
Yeah.
Blackmore with Granny
Yeah,
Bonnet, that
yeah.
kind of
My
singing.
dad was into those guys.
Hell yeah.
What's weird is about
That's
like
good
I
shit.
grew up without knowing who the fuck Hammerfall was. Same with my brother. We're both like, I don't know how we missed these guys. I was in Baltimore a few years ago for a Halloween concert, and Hammerfall opened for him, and I was like, "Who the fuck are these guys? These guys are
Oh,
amazing!"
they're great.
Yeah. Then I went back and like now I've got all their entire catalog downloaded and memorized. Like they're and their last
Right.
album, I loved it. The one that just came out in what May of this last year. Loved it.
Yeah,
Love
that
those
had
guys.
Hallowed Be
They're
My Name.
so
Hallowed Be My Name is a great song.
yeah.
And the video they got to it with all the Knights Templar like
Yeah, like
snipers and
these
all that
guys
kind of
just
stuff.
I'm just like,
It's
how the
great.
fuck did I miss these guys my entire life? Like they're so like melodic and catchy and it's good music and it's positive. Like there's no like negative. They're just
Right.
a they reminded me a lot, like obviously a different style, but they reminded me a lot of Iron Maiden in the fact that they're just professional musicians. Like that's how I've always
Yeah.
described Iron Maiden. Like you said it, like right, why you went and saw them, like nobody misses a note. Like they don't, like they're perfect live because they take that shit serious. They're not like the band that you talked about where they're passed out in the third set because they're fucking hammered.
Right.
Like, no, like, and I've read so much and learned so much of the history and read all the books and watched all the documentaries and all this shit on Iron Man. And like, yeah, like they literally tried to be a serious, like this was their job. This is what they wanted to do. And that was all driven by Steve Harris. That's why they kicked out the first singer, right? For Bruce Dickinson, because they wanted to be serious and they wanted to elevate what they were doing. But like the reason they're still mid 60s and playing the way they are and performing the way they are is they took the shit seriously. And not a lot of people did that. A lot of people just
Right.
wanted to be rock stars, right? You could put this into any field, whether it's the military, right? What do I always tell the soldiers? Everybody wants to get promoted. Nobody wants the fucking responsibility that comes with it. You just want the paycheck,
Right.
right? You just want the
Exactly.
rank, right? Same with jobs in the regular, in the like the civilian world. Everybody wants to be a fucking VP, or everyone wants to be this fucking CEO, or you want to be the president. You just don't want nothing that comes with. You don't want the responsibility. You just want the title,
Well,
and that's what the bands. Same,
yeah.
like everybody just wanted to be a fucking rock star. Nobody wanted to do what actually took to maintain and keep that level, right? And that's why you got bands, which is wild because Korn is still somehow performing. Like they're still touring, they're still popular. I
They
don't
are.
get it, but them excluded. For every corn, there's a fucking Limp Bizkit, who I think are the corniest people of all fucking time.
There's a good chance of that. Yes.
Yes, but that's my point. And like I think you saw a lot of that in the '80s, right? Like these bands would
Yeah.
come and go because everyone was just trying to capitalize on something, make a quick buck off of it. But bands like the Iron Maiden, the other ones you talked about, they've survived because it's a craft and they took it serious.
Yep. And there's also, you know, a lot of credence to the fact that in the music industry, it's definitely who you know and what kind of
Oh,
sacrifices
for
you're
sure.
willing to make and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Because there's some just insanely talented, some of the most talented guys that you've never
Yep.
known existed are the ones that play in a local band at the bar. But you know what? They do it because they love doing it.
My guitar
And
teacher was like that in freshman
you
year.
know,
This dude, I
I mean,
play
why
anything.
Why did why didn't Vito Bratta from White Lion ever get the attention like George Lynch from Dokken did or Mick Mars from Motley Crue? You know, I mean, equally good. Or then Nuno Betancourt from Extreme, one of the best guitar
No
players on the face of
Betancourt.
the
I
planet,
don't know.
still. And it's like, you know, they had like a flash in the pan, and it was all about how to sell it. And video became a big thing,
I think
and
back then for
appearing.
sure it was all packaged,
And
right? It was all how do you
yeah,
package? What's the image we're gonna
I
sell? All that
yeah.
bullshit. Yeah.
Iron Maiden kicked ass in the late 70s. They stayed kicking ass through the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, never changed. And that's one
They
of the
also
reasons
never
why I
relied
like
on
them so
radio.
much.
They never had to rely on
Yeah,
radio. They created their own fucking, their own. They just toured relentlessly worldwide. Like they didn't ever needed radio. Their biggest radio song, in my opinion, is probably the fucking worst song they've ever made, and that's "Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter." That's their only number one hit ever in England. Is "Bring Your
right.
Daughter to the Slaughter." I'm just like, it's a throwaway song. They've got a million songs better than this. It's just like,
Yeah,
it's only sounds like Iron Maiden at the end where it's like they do the with the whole fucking
yeah,
guitar shit. But other than that, it's like "Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter." Really? Is this what we're going with? Like it's
yeah. And oh, and then over here, you know, it's going to be "Run to the Hills" is the one
yeah,
that they're
yeah.
always going to play. You know, and there's nothing wrong with the song. I've covered the song a thousand times. You know, I like it. And then if you're lucky, they might play "Wasted Years" or they might
Love it.
play.
Yeah, Oasis is great. Dave Murray. Or no, that was Adrian Smith who wrote that one. Yeah, Adrian.
Yeah, or they might play "The Trooper" if you're really lucky.
That's
You
my
know, so
favorite. Yeah, always the
yeah.
Trooper. First one I ever learned to play was the Trooper.
I do like some of the old Paul Di'Anno stuff, like "Wrathchild." We cover that in my band just because it's
No,
not like
there's
impossible.
my favorite song from that era is Phantom of the Opera. It's one of the, I would
Oh
love.
yeah, that's
I
great.
hope they play that on this new tour because they're saying they're playing songs they've never played before or haven't played in years. If they
Right.
play Phantom of the fucking Opera, I'm gonna lose it because that fucking song is incredible. That's one of my favorites of all time. That song's
Yeah,
amazing.
that's just a wonderful song. I mean, there isn't any Maiden songs. Well, maybe that album that they had Blaze Bailey on.
Yeah,
I don't know.
both of those albums, like I just don't like him, but even my brother, we had this conversation a few months ago. It's just like, okay, if you didn't know who Iron Maiden was before him, you would like those albums because
Right.
the songs are really like Sign of the Cross, like they've got some really good fucking songs that they performed
The
live with
Angel and the
tickets.
Gambler.
Yeah,
Angel and the Gambler was great.
there's a lot of good songs on those two albums. It's just He's not Bruce Dickinson, and that's what you expected,
Right.
right? Because once Bruce took over, you never were like, oh, he's not Paul. You didn't really care.
Yeah.
Just like he's way better and the music's better. But then Blady came in and it's just like, eh. That's why I almost like, I mean, they're too old to do it now. It's not worth it. But I almost wish like selfishly that they just recorded those two albums again once Bruce came back.
Yeah.
Because what they followed it up with is my favorite album of theirs, period. And that was 2000. That was Brave New World. That's my favorite album.
Yeah. Brave New World is, I mean, prior to that, all of newer albums and not just the classics, Fear of the Dark was like up
Yep.
here for me. Brave New World went higher.
Yeah, like
I mean,
every song, it's
all of
incredible.
us
The whole
in the
thing just plays like from start to finish. It's just it all runs perfectly sequentially. There's no fall off. It's such a beautiful album. It's amazing.
hell yeah.
That's my all-time favorite. So you know what's curious? I had because um do you follow well his name's Steve. Do you follow Steve Schultz, My Beard Gone Wild on Twitter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he
I
was on
do.
a few months. Well, I think what was it? It's probably December or November. Maybe I don't know. But anyway, but we talked about Metallica, and I was curious because you didn't mention Metallica, and we were talking about like I always joke the fall of Metallica coincides with the fall of the Soviet Union because remember they had that 91
Right.
tour or that performance in Russia, and there's like 1 million people or whatever watching, and then in my opinion, everything from that point on of Metallica post 1991 has sucked. So I was just curious, like, what's your take on what the hell, what has happened to Metallica? What,
Ah,
because there's too
I
many
don't.
bands that are still playing that are creative, and like this last
Yeah.
Judas Priest album was fucking amazing. Like,
Last two, like
yeah,
last two Judas Priest albums
yeah.
were
It's
fucking
just like,
amazing.
so what is
Yeah.
Metallica? Like, what is wrong with the? Are they just so? Is it Lars? Is it because he's just such a fucking egotistical asshole? Is that what it is? I don't know.
The best I can figure is they all just got fucking old. And I'm a guy that I know every single song on Kill 'Em All, including
Yeah,
the
we all do.
solos.
Yeah,
And I mean playing them, covering them in bands.
yeah.
You know, I mean, I've played half of Fade to Black. Played half of Master of Puppets in bands. You know, Justice for All,
Great
you know,
album.
seemed to be that pinnacle. And then the Black Album, and it's like, okay, this is wildly popular. So I don't know if they got a taste of the money and what it would take to just tread that line to cross metal into mainstream to become mainstream metal and then become the industry standard. And I'll never take anything away from Metallica. They're the biggest,
Oh,
you
for
know,
sure.
metal band
Biggest
that we've ever
American
had,
band. Yeah.
even though I'm definitely a Megadeth fan. But
Who
I don't know.
started in
It just feels like,
Metallica?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, you won't have Metallica if you don't have Dave Mustaine.
that's
But
true. Yeah.
uh, I just think they got old. I think they got
Well, it's
old.
weird because you brought up the transition, right? Like, Justice for All was 88, and that's my favorite. Like, I love that album. Then they went to 91, and I don't know what it was that brought them to that, but you're right. It was wildly successful. What have they sold 40 million fucking albums of that? I mean, it's an
Oh
incredible
yeah,
album. And the songs are really good. It's just like if you had never heard of Metallica before then, you'd probably be like, okay, that's not Metallica. But then what
yep.
did they follow it up with? They followed it up with
Oh yeah, load and reload.
it took
Yeah,
5 years, bro. Load came out in 96. And
yeah,
then they brought back, then they did Reload. Like these albums were awful. And
right.
you know what's weird is because I went to finally see Metallica. I was a sophomore in high school, or maybe I was a junior. It was 1997. It was the Load tour. And what was that song that was their single? Still I Sleep or some shit?
Yeah, until I
Yeah,
sleep.
Until I Sleep. So they played that. They played Where's Your Crown King Nothing, and I think one other song. But then other than that, the other 2 hours of that concert was everything else. It was just all their old shit. They didn't play none of the new. Like
Right.
it's like they knew nobody wants to hear this fucking album, right? Because if you're a band the size
People
of
want to hear the
Metallica and
Four
you release a
Horsemen.
brand new
Yeah.
album and you only played three songs,
People
it's
want to
like
hear
they
the Four
knew.
Horsemen. They want to hear
Yeah.
Fade to Black. They want to hear Battery. They you
Yeah.
know they want to hear Orion. You
For
know,
whom the
if
bell
anybody that,
tolls, like
yeah,
exactly all that stuff. And then like even now to this day, like every time I hear like oh like because they do cool shit because of where they're from, right? Like they're from San Francisco, so they'll partner with the San Francisco Orchestra and they'll do like those things.
right.
But what are the songs they're playing? They're not playing any of this new shit. And then this new album that comes out, what, last year, the year before, like I'm like, all right, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna have an open mind, and I'm not gonna think like this is Metallica. I just want to hear an hour of music and I'm just gonna judge it. And I listen to it, I'm like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah,
There's
and
no
you
way
know,
that Lars and unless they're just so fucking egotistical that they're just like, yeah, this is really good. Who's telling them
and
this shit is good?
the fucked up thing of it is, they have one of the best bass players on the face of the planet right now in
They
that
don't even
band, and
use them though.
they're using less than 10% of his talent.
Right.
I mean, Robert
That
Trujillo,
guy's an afterthought. You don't this what does he do?
yeah, it's hard to think that this guy is the guy that used to be the bass player that was just blowing people's minds in Suicidal Tendencies and Infectious Grooves. Like, Metallica's got to put him to fucking sleep, especially on bullshit like
And he
Saint
just cashed
Anger and
his
whatever
checks,
this last
man.
one.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
God. And like you're right because you're right. I didn't like anything of Saint Anger. Death Magnetic. They had 2 or 3 songs I really liked, but it's just that's the problem. It's like they went from a band who made albums to now they're a band who makes a song here and there. Every 5 years they make a good song. Like they're just like they're not
I mean,
making good.
even Anthrax, the other one in the big four that we haven't talked about, is still putting out decent music.
Yeah, I've never
You
got
know,
into Anthrax. Never got into them.
they had ebbs and flows and
I just
whatever.
don't think they're
They
talented.
had
I just think they're
moments,
just yeah, just they strike me as the group that was just like, let's go get instruments and see what we can come up with. Like it never struck me as like a talented band, like where you're like, oh, I want to be
yeah,
like those guys, right? I just I never could get into them. I respected one of the. I remember the crossover they did with Public Enemy. I thought that was a really cool song, and it was a cool time. I remember the whole video, and like that was cool. How that happened, I would love to know the backstory on it because I was too young to understand it. But I was
right.
just like, how did Anthrax of all bands get mixed up with Public Enemy?
I
Right?
think that a lot of them grew up in the same area.
Is that what it was? That makes
Yeah,
sense. Okay.
Charlie Benante is still one hell of a drummer too, regardless. But yeah, oh boy, I tell you what, that was a lot of ground covered and everything. That's pretty awesome. We have a hell of a lot of stuff in common, and we could probably keep going for another couple hours
Yeah.
talking on stuff. But
No, it's time for you to go, my friend. You got to take care of cats. So
I got cats. I got supper ready here pretty quick and everything. But
yeah, man. I
well,
appreciate you spending some time with me, sitting here at the virtual bar, drinking Bud Zero and talking what the fuck happened to Metallica and all the good stuff. Covered a lot,
yeah,
man. As always.
next time
And
we'll have to get some of the more I guess attention gravitating guys on here, and we'll have to talk like military leadership doctrines with some interesting people. I got a couple good ideas for you. I
okay.
think
Well, hey, you
we could
fire into
really
the old hit me up, man. Let's see what we can come up with.
we could do something fun in the future and everything. But no,
For sure.
thanks for having me on as a guest. I really
Absolutely,
appreciate it.
buddy.
And if anybody stayed awake after the first 20 minutes of me yammering about maintenance and logistics and everything else, and you're still with us, kudos for watching.
Millions
You know,
and millions of listeners, my friend. No.
right.
All right, that's Viking Rob
Yep.
on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Go find him there.
Yep.
And I guess, well, I'm not going to say go Vikings, but get ready for a Viking season and go Bears. All right, buddy.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks,
man.
bro.